Duplex standard calculations apply to duplexes with two separate metered spaces. Each space must be calculated separately as a dwelling unit. Basic loads for each space are determined using the same methods as for single-family homes. Two optional methods can be used to account for shared spaces in duplexes, including laundry or a garage. Firstly, the combined loading method can be used when shared spaces are small and have minimal impact on the overall load. To use this method, combine the loads of both spaces into a single calculation and adjust the basic lighting loads by multiplying them by 1.25. Secondly, the shared space distribution method is used when shared spaces are significant and have a significant impact on the overall load. With this method, allocate a portion of the shared space loads to each unit based on two factors. Firstly, the percentage of time the space is used by each unit, and secondly, the proportion of the unit's total floor area to the shared space area. The procedure for load calculations on duplexes involves several steps. 1. Calculate the basic loads for each space using the methods for single-family homes. 2. If using the combined loading method, combine the basic loads of both spaces and multiply the basic lighting loads by 1.25. 3. If using the shared space distribution method, allocate the loads of the shared space to each unit based on the criteria mentioned earlier. 4. Calculate the heating and cooling loads for each space separately. 5. Size the electrical service equipment based on the total calculated load. For clarity, refer to the Washington Administrative Code Title 1904 for specific details and equations. Use the optional calculations section in the Washington Administrative Code for guidance on the combined loading and shared space distribution methods. It may be helpful to consult with a qualified electrician or heating, ventilation, and air conditioning contractor for professional assistance if needed. Standard calculation for duplex requires treating each unit as a separate dwelling. This involves calculating the general lighting load, small appliance branch circuits, and laundry circuits for each unit individually, just as you would for a single-family home. The general lighting load is calculated based on the square footage of each unit. The National Electrical Code, or NEC, specifies a minimum lighting load of 3 volt amps per square foot. Multiply the square footage of the unit by 3 volt amps to determine the general lighting load. For example, if a unit is 1000 square feet, the general lighting load would be 1000 square feet times 3 volt amps per square foot, which equals 3000 volt amps. Each dwelling unit must have at least 2 small appliance branch circuits to serve kitchen and dining areas. These circuits are rated at 20 amps each and are calculated at 1500 volt amps per circuit. Therefore, the total load for small appliance branch circuits is 2 times 1500 volt amps, which equals 3000 volt amps. Each dwelling unit must also have at least one laundry circuit rated at 20 amps. This circuit is calculated at 1500 volt amps. Add all the calculated loads, general lighting, small appliance circuits, and laundry circuit to obtain the total basic load for each unit. Apply a demand factor to the total basic load as permitted by the NEC. The demand factor allows you to reduce the calculated load based on the assumption that not all loads will be operating simultaneously. For the initial 3000 volt amps of the total basic load, apply a 100% demand factor, meaning you use the full 3000 volt amps. For the remaining load exceeding 3000 volt amps, apply a 35% demand factor. For example, if the total basic load is 10,000 volt amps, the first 3000 volt amps are taken at 100%, and the remaining 7000 volt amps are taken at 35%. The calculation would be 3000 volt amps plus 0.35 times 7000 volt amps, which equals 5450 volt amps. Repeat these steps for the second unit in the duplex. Add the calculated loads of both units after applying demand factors to determine the total service load for the duplex. Optional calculation methods allow for a more refined approach, particularly when shared spaces or equipment are involved. The combined load method is suitable when the shared spaces, such as hallways or small storage areas, have a minimal impact on the overall load. With this method, You combine the loads of both dwelling units and treat the duplex as a single dwelling unit for load calculation purposes. Calculate the general lighting load for both units combined using the 3 volt amps per square foot rule. Add the square footage of both units and multiply by 3 volt amps per square foot. For example, if each unit is 1000 square feet, the combined square footage is 2000 square feet. The general lighting load would be 2000 square feet times 3 volt amps per square foot, which equals 6000 volt amps. As with the standard calculation, each unit requires at least 2 small appliance branch circuits and 1 laundry circuit. Since you are treating the duplex as a single dwelling, you still need to account for these circuits. The load for small appliance branch circuits is 2 times 1500 volt amps, which equals 3000 volt amps per unit, totaling 6000 volt amps for the duplex. The load for laundry circuits is 1500 volt amps per unit, totaling 3000 volt amps for the duplex. Add all the calculated loads, general lighting, small appliance circuits, and laundry circuits to obtain the total basic load for the duplex. Apply a demand factor to the total basic load as permitted by the NEC. The demand factor is applied in the same way as in the standard calculation. For the initial 3000 volt amps, apply a 100% demand factor. For the remaining load exceeding 3000 volt amps, apply a 35% demand factor. The shared space distribution method is used when the shared spaces, such as laundry rooms, garages, or workshops, have a significant impact on the overall load. This method involves allocating a portion of the shared space loads to each unit based on specific criteria. Identify all shared spaces and the electrical loads associated with them. This includes lighting, receptacles, and any shared equipment. Determine the percentage of time each unit uses the shared space. This can be based on estimate or actual usage data. For example, if one unit uses the shared laundry room 60% of the time and the other unit uses it 40% of the time, these percentages will be used to allocate the laundry room's electrical load. Calculate the proportion of each unit's floor area to the total shared space area. This is used to allocate loads for spaces where usage time is not a primary factor. For example, if the shared garage has an area of 400 square feet and one unit has a floor area of 1000 square feet while the other has 1200 square feet, the proportions would be calculated based on these floor areas. Allocate the shared space loads to each unit based on the determined percentages and proportions. For example, if the shared laundry room has a total load of 3000 volt amps and one unit uses it 60% of the time, that unit would be allocated 0.60 times 3000 volt amps, which equals 1800 volt amps. The other unit would be allocated 0.40 times 3000 volt amps, which equals 1200 volt amps. After allocating the shared space loads, calculate the basic loads for each unit individually, as in the standard calculation. This includes general lighting, small appliance circuits, and laundry circuits. Add the allocated shared space loads to the basic loads of each unit to obtain the total load for each unit. Apply demand factors to the total loads of each unit as permitted by the NEC. The demand factors are applied in the same way as in the standard calculation. Finally, add the calculated loads of both units after applying demand factors to determine the total service load for the duplex. When performing load calculations on duplexes, several important factors should be considered. Always refer to the latest edition of the National Electrical Code, or NEC, and any local amendments or regulations. The NEC provides the guidelines and requirements for electrical installations and load calculations. Ensure that all calculations are accurate and well documented. This includes recording the square footage of each unit, the loads for all circuits, the demand factors applied, and the final calculated loads. Accurate documentation is essential for inspections and future reference. When dealing with shared spaces, carefully assess the usage patterns and allocate loads accordingly. The shared space distribution method requires accurate data on usage time and floor area proportions. Consider future expansion or changes in occupancy when performing load calculations. It is often prudent to oversize the electrical service to accommodate future needs. Consult with a qualified electrician or electrical engineer if you have any questions or concerns about load calculations. They can provide expert guidance and ensure that the electrical system is safe and compliant with all applicable codes. Accurate load calculations are crucial for ensuring the safety and reliability of the electrical system in a duplex. By following the standard and optional methods outlined in the NEC and considering the factors discussed, you can perform load calculations that meet the requirements of the electrical code. Always prioritize safety and consult with qualified professionals when needed. The goal is to ensure that the electrical service is adequately sized to handle the expected loads while maintaining safety and compliance. Remember to keep meticulous records of all calculations and assumptions, as this documentation may be required for inspections and future modifications to the electrical system. By adhering to these guidelines, you can confidently perform load calculations for duplexes and ensure a safe and reliable electrical installation.